You think overthinking is intelligence. You think it means you are careful, aware, self-controlled. You tell yourself that you're just trying to understand things fully before you act, that you are responsible, thoughtful, mature. But overthinking is not wisdom. It is hesitation disguised as depth. It is fear pretending to be analysis, and it is one of the most reliable ways to keep yourself weak without ever feeling like you failed. Overthinking does not begin in the mind. It begins in the body. It begins as a biological response to uncertainty. Your nervous system senses risk and delays movement. It wants more data, more clarity, more reassurance. In primitive environments, this made sense. Acting too quickly could get you killed. Waiting could save your life. But the world you live in now does not punish hesitation the same way it once did. It exploits it. The moment you hesitate, you reveal something. You reveal that you are unsure of your footing. You reveal that you are still seeking safety before acting. Others feel this instantly, not consciously, instinctively. They sense that you are not anchored, and when someone is not anchored, they can be influenced. Overthinking feels internal, but its consequences are external. While you are replaying scenarios in your head, the environment is moving without you. While you are weighing possibilities, other people are choosing positions. While you are trying to avoid mistakes, others are creating facts. Power does not wait for certainty. It moves in the presence of ambiguity. Machiavelli understood that hesitation is not neutral. It is a signal. The one who hesitates is telling the world that they are still asking permission from reality. They are waiting to feel ready. But readiness is not something that arrives. It is something that is claimed. Overthinking is the refusal to claim. You tell yourself you are being strategic, but strategy requires decision. Endless thought without action is not strategy. It is avoidance. It is the mind looping to protect the ego from exposure. Because the moment you act, you can be wrong. And being wrong feels dangerous to someone who has learned to tie their identity to correctness. So you delay. You analyze tone. You replay conversations. You imagine future outcomes. You construct mental simulations that feel productive, but change nothing. The illusion of control replaces actual control. And while you are busy managing imaginary risks, real risks are forming quietly around you. People who overthink believe they are protecting themselves. In reality, they are advertising their vulnerabilities. Overthinking leaks through behavior, through delayed responses, through excessive clarification, through a constant need to be understood. Others learn quickly that pressure creates pause in you, that uncertainty paralyzes you, that emotional complexity slows you down. Once someone learns this, they adjust. They push subtly. They introduce ambiguity. They ask open-ended questions. They frame situations without clear structure, and you freeze. Not visibly, internally. You begin processing. You begin weighing. You begin doubting. And while you are doing that, they are moving. This is how power shifts without conflict. Overthinking is not just about fear of being wrong. It is about fear of being seen. Action exposes you. Thought hides you. As long as you stay in your head, you remain unmeasured. Unmeasured feels safe, but unmeasured also means unpositioned. And in any hierarchy, the unpositioned are at the bottom. The world does not reward potential. It rewards placement. It rewards those who occupy space decisively, even imperfectly. Overthinking keeps you floating. Floating looks flexible, but it has no weight. Weight is what bends reality. Machiavelli would not have advised a ruler to think endlessly about the morality of action. He would have advised them to understand consequences and then move. Movement creates consequences, but it also creates gravity. Gravity draws others into your orbit. Stillness does not. Overthinkers often confuse caution with intelligence. But intelligence without action is ornamental. It decorates the mind while leaving the external world untouched. The most dangerous people are not the most thoughtful. They are the most decisive under uncertainty. Decisiveness does not mean impulsivity. It means accepting that incomplete information is the default state of life. Waiting for clarity is waiting forever. Those who understand this stop asking whether the ground is stable and start building on it anyway. Overthinking keeps you stuck in reaction mode. You are always responding to possibilities instead of imposing direction. You let imagined futures dictate present behavior. You allow hypothetical risks to outweigh tangible opportunities. And slowly, your confidence erodes. Not because you failed, but because you never tested yourself against reality. Confidence is not built by thinking. It is built by surviving action. Each decision you make and live through teaches your nervous system that you can handle consequence. Overthinking prevents this learning. It keeps your system untrained, fragile, over-responsive to stress. This fragility becomes visible. You begin to over-explain. You justify choices that did not need justification. You ask for reassurance indirectly. You seek alignment before acting. These behaviors signal uncertainty, and uncertainty invites control. People with power do not need to rush you. They let you stall yourself. Overthinking also creates moral paralysis. You want to choose the best option, the fairest option, the least harmful option. But morality is rarely clear in motion. Waiting for moral certainty is another form of avoidance. It allows you to feel virtuous without taking responsibility. Responsibility begins when thought ends. Machiavelli was not advocating cruelty. He was advocating realism. He understood that outcomes matter more than intentions, that those who hesitate in the name of purity often create worse consequences than those who act decisively with imperfect motives. Overthinkers cling to intention because intention feels controllable. Outcomes feel chaotic. But power belongs to those who can tolerate chaos without dissolving. When you overthink, you are trying to control the uncontrollable. You are attempting to predict reactions, outcomes, perceptions. This is exhausting, and it never works fully. Human systems are too complex, too emotional, too inconsistent. Those who understand this stop trying to predict everything. They move and then adapt. Adaptation is faster than prediction. Correction is cheaper than paralysis. Overthinking also keeps you emotionally reactive. The more you think, the more attached you become to imagined outcomes. You invest emotionally in scenarios that have not happened. When reality deviates, you feel destabilized. Your reaction feels justified because you already lived the scenario in your head. This makes you predictable. Predictable people are easy to manage. Their triggers are visible. Their delays are reliable. Their hesitation can be engineered. The one who does not overthink moves differently. They do not attach to imagined futures. They respond to what is in front of them. They remain grounded in the present moment, not because they are mindful, but because presence is efficient. Efficiency is power. Overthinking also distorts time. You feel busy without progress. You feel effort without result. This creates frustration. Frustration weakens resolve. You begin to doubt yourself. You wonder why others seem to move so easily while you feel stuck. They are not more capable. They are less entangled. They accept imperfection. They accept misunderstanding. They accept that not every move will be optimal. And because of this acceptance, they accumulate experience faster. Experience compounds. Thought does not. Machiavelli would have recognized overthinking as a luxury of the powerless. Those with authority do not have the option to delay endlessly. Their position forces decision, and decision sharpens instinct. You do not lack instinct. You have buried it under analysis. Instinct is not impulsive. It is compressed experience. It is pattern recognition operating faster than conscious thought. Overthinking interrupts this process. It tells instinct to wait, to justify itself, to prove its logic. By the time it does, the moment has passed. This is why overthinkers often regret inaction more than action. Not because action would have been perfect, but because inaction left them irrelevant. Relevance requires participation. Overthinking also weakens boundaries. When you cannot decide internally, you become vulnerable to external influence. Others step in with suggestions, opinions, frameworks. You outsource your decision-making. This feels collaborative, but it erodes autonomy. Autonomy is the foundation of power. Those who overthink often appear agreeable, flexible, open-minded. But beneath this is an inability to assert direction, and direction is what others follow. Machiavelli understood that leadership is not about consensus, it is about clarity. Clarity does not emerge from endless thought. It emerges from choice. Choice cuts through noise. Overthinking keeps all options alive. This feels safe, but it prevents commitment. And without commitment, nothing solid forms. Relationships stay shallow. Projects stall. Influence fades. People do not trust those who cannot commit. Not because commitment guarantees success, but because it signals self-trust. Self-trust is contagious. Overthinking is a symptom of mistrust in oneself. You do not trust your judgment, so you delay. You do not trust your resilience, so you avoid risk. You do not trust your ability to recover, so you stay still. Stillness looks calm, but it is often fear in disguise. The irony is that action builds trust in yourself far more reliably than thought. Each time you decide and survive, your system learns. Overthinking denies this learning. Machiavelli would say that fortune favors those who meet her halfway, not those who wait for her to reveal herself fully. Fortune is unpredictable. Those who hesitate are crushed by her volatility. Those who act shape her impact. Overthinking is an attempt to tame fortune before engaging. It never works. The mind wants certainty. Reality offers probability. Power belongs to those who can operate within probability without freezing. When you stop overthinking, you do not become reckless. You become grounded. You begin making smaller decisions faster. You reduce the emotional weight of choice. You treat decisions as adjustments, not verdicts. This shift is uncomfortable. The mind protests. It wants guarantees. It wants control. But slowly, something changes. The noise quiets. The urgency fades. You feel less internal friction, not because life is easier, but because you are no longer fighting uncertainty. Overthinking also keeps you reactive to others' opinions. You imagine how your actions will be perceived. You simulate judgments. You preempt criticism. This is a form of submission. You are allowing imaginary observers to govern your behavior. Those who hold power do not act to avoid judgment. They act and let judgment follow. Judgment without leverage is noise. Overthinkers give judgment leverage by caring preemptively. Machiavelli would have advised you to care less about being seen as good and more about being effective. Effectiveness does not require approval. It requires clarity of aim. Aim collapses thought into motion. When you act, feedback arrives. Real feedback, not imagined. You adjust. You refine. This loop creates momentum. Momentum creates presence. Presence attracts opportunity. Overthinking breaks this loop. You remain in your head while life passes. You are starting to feel it now. Not as excitement, not as motivation, as distance. A subtle separation between you and the impulses that used to control you. The urge to analyze everything is still there, but it feels weaker, less authoritative, like an outdated reflex firing without conviction. This is where most people stop. They taste the relief of reduced overthinking and mistake it for mastery. They think the work is done because the noise quieted. It is not. This is only the surface layer. The deeper layer is where power either consolidates or collapses. Because overthinking does not just weaken decision-making, it shapes how others relate to you over time. People do not exploit intelligence. They exploit hesitation. When someone senses that you need time to think, they learn something important. They learn that pressure buys influence. They learn that urgency short-circuits your clarity. They learn that uncertainty makes you cooperative. Once this is learned, it becomes embedded in how they treat you, not maliciously, mechanically. This is how you end up in situations where others decide the pace and you follow, where conversations move faster than your comfort, where commitments form before you feel ready, where boundaries blur because you are still processing. You are not being overpowered. You are being outpaced. Overthinking makes you slow in environments that reward speed, not reckless speed, decisive speed. The ability to choose a direction and adjust later. The ability to move with partial information and trust correction more than paralysis. Machiavelli understood that hesitation invites domination, not because hesitation is immoral, but because it creates asymmetry. One person moves, the other waits. Movement sets terms. Waiting accepts them. This is why overthinkers often feel like life is something they react to instead of something they shape. They are always arriving after the moment passed, always responding to conditions they did not choose. Power is not about control over others. It is about control over timing. Overthinking gives your timing away. When you hesitate, others fill the gap. They define the situation. They frame the options. They suggest interpretations. By the time you act, you are acting within their structure. This is subtle. It does not feel like coercion. It feels like cooperation. But cooperation without leverage is submission. The dangerous part is that overthinkers often believe they are choosing harmony. They think avoiding decisive action prevents conflict. In reality, it creates quiet resentment. Resentment toward yourself for not acting. Resentment toward others for moving without you. That resentment drains energy. It clouds perception. It keeps you mentally busy but externally stagnant. And stagnation is weakness, not morally, structurally. Machiavelli would tell you that power favors those who act while others are still considering. Not because those actors are smarter, but because action forces reality to respond. Reality responds more reliably than thought. Overthinking is an attempt to master reality before engaging with it. But reality does not reveal itself fully to observers. It reveals itself to participants. Participation requires risk. The fear behind overthinking is not fear of failure. It is fear of exposure, of being seen choosing, of being associated with an outcome, of having a position that can be judged. As long as you are thinking, you remain undefined. Undefined feels safe, but undefined also means replaceable. Defined individuals create friction. Friction creates respect. When you choose, you limit yourself. Limits create shape. Shape creates presence. Presence creates gravity. Overthinkers float. Decisive people occupy space. This is why decisive individuals are often forgiven for mistakes, while overthinkers are not. Mistakes made in motion are interpreted as learning. Hesitation is interpreted as incapacity. Even when overthinkers are intelligent, capable, and insightful, their hesitation overshadows their competence. People remember delays more than ideas. Machiavelli understood that perception matters more than internal truth. The world does not see your thought process. It sees your movement or lack of it. And silence without movement is interpreted as weakness. There is a difference between restraint and hesitation. Restraint is chosen. Hesitation is reactive. Overthinking produces hesitation, not restraint. Restraint still carries authority. Hesitation dissolves it. The shift happens when you stop using thought as a shield. You do not eliminate thinking. You compress it. You decide faster, not because you know more, but because you accept that knowing more will not arrive before action is required. This acceptance is what separates those who lead from those who observe. Overthinking also traps you in emotional dependency. You become dependent on internal certainty before external action. But certainty is rare. Emotionally stable individuals do not wait for certainty. They wait for alignment between direction and values, not outcomes. Values anchor action. Outcomes fluctuate. When you act from values, overthinking loses its grip. The question shifts from what if to does this align? Alignment simplifies choice. It removes infinite variables and replaces them with a single filter. This is why overthinking collapses when identity becomes solid, not performative identity, internal identity. A clear understanding of what you will tolerate, pursue, and ignore. Overthinkers lack this clarity not because they are confused, but because they avoid commitment. Commitment would end analysis. Ending analysis would expose them to judgment, so they stay in thought. Machiavelli would say that those who wish to avoid criticism entirely end up avoiding power entirely. Criticism follows visibility. Visibility follows action. If you want strength, you accept visibility. This acceptance creates a strange calm, not the calm of comfort, but the calm of inevitability. You stop asking whether you should act and and start asking how to act with minimal waste. Waste becomes the enemy, not error. Overthinking wastes time, energy, and opportunity. Errors can be corrected. Waste cannot. Once you see this, your relationship with thought changes. Thought becomes a tool, not a refuge. You think to clarify direction, not to delay exposure. This changes how you speak. You say less. You decide faster. You stop narrating your uncertainty. You stop explaining your hesitation. Others feel this immediately. They stop filling silence for you. They stop guiding you. They stop framing things for you. They wait. Waiting is power shifting. When others wait on you, you are no longer reactive. You are central. This is not dominance. It is presence. Presence is the quiet authority that comes from internal alignment. Overthinking fractures alignment. Each new thought pulls you in a different direction. Decision never stabilizes. You oscillate. Oscillation feels like flexibility, but it is instability. Stable people do not oscillate publicly. Machiavelli understood that stability intimidates more than force. Force can be resisted. Stability must be adapted to. When you stop overthinking, you stop oscillating. Your movement becomes slower, but firmer. Each decision carries weight because it is not diluted by apology or doubt. You stop needing consensus. You stop asking for permission disguised as advice. Advice becomes input, not validation. Validation seeking is another form of overthinking. You ask others what they think because you do not trust your own judgment yet. Each opinion adds noise. Noise increases doubt. Doubt increases delay. This cycle ends when you decide that judgment is learned through consequence, not conversation. Machiavelli would tell you that advisors are useful, but only to those who can decide without them. Those who need advice to decide are ruled by it. Overthinking makes you advisory dependent. Breaking this dependence feels uncomfortable. You feel exposed, unsupported. But that discomfort is the training signal. It tells your nervous system that you are operating without emotional scaffolding. Scaffolding creates dependency. Strength forms when scaffolding is removed. As this happens, emotional reactions soften. Not because you suppress them, but because they lose urgency. You no longer need to resolve every internal signal immediately. You let them pass. This reduces internal drama. Drama feeds overthinking. Without drama, thought quiets naturally. You begin to experience silence in the mind, not emptiness. Space. In that space, decisions emerge more cleanly. This is where most people expect clarity. But clarity is not the prize. Commitment is. Clarity often arrives after commitment, not before. This is another illusion overthinkers carry. That action must be preceded by certainty. In reality, certainty is often the result of action that survived reality. Machiavelli would call this shaping fortune rather than waiting for it. As you move through this stage, you stop romanticizing caution. You see it for what it is, a way to delay exposure, a way to avoid ownership. Ownership is heavy. It binds you to outcomes. It removes excuses. But ownership also builds authority. People trust those who own their decisions, even bad ones, especially bad ones handled calmly. Overthinkers rarely own mistakes cleanly. They over-explain them. They justify them. They dilute them. Decisive individuals acknowledge and move on. Movement restores momentum. Momentum restores influence. Influence does not require perfection. It requires direction. This is the final realization. Overthinking keeps you weak, not because it makes you stupid, but because it prevents direction from solidifying. Without direction, you are moved by forces around you. With direction, you interact with those forces instead of being carried by them. At the end of this shift, you do not feel powerful. You feel settled, grounded, less reactive, less concerned with optimal outcomes. You no longer need to think endlessly because you trust your capacity to respond. Thought becomes quiet because it no longer needs to protect you. You are not fearless. You are no longer afraid of acting without guarantees. And that changes how the world treats you. Not dramatically, not loudly, subtly. People stop rushing you. They stop steering you. They stop assuming you will wait. They sense that hesitation no longer governs you. And in a world that feeds on hesitation, that alone is enough to change your position.